Deconverted Man here. I wanted to try something a little different. Now, I can't play video in this live stream with webcam, but I could aim the camera at the screen as I watch the video and then pause it. Let's see if that works. Might not. What's the worst that could happen? If it doesn't work, I'll just delete the video. Whatever. All right, so How to Answer Mad Dill Honey by SJ Thomason. On the resurrection of Jesus, because according to the video description here, the best explanation we have for the or the facts, I think you mean of the facts, which there are no facts, surrounding Jesus's resurrection is Jesus is risen. He's not bread. But what he means is came back from the dead. No, that's not the best explanation at all. Even if everything that was in there, well, I mean, you have already. If you think it's all fact anyway, then I guess you could believe that Jesus came back because you have other miracles that you are granting anyway. So you might as well. I mean, it's pointless at that point. But anyway, so we know that Jesus was crucified under Pontius Pilate. Well, no, we don't know that. We know that that's in the story. There's a question about where Pontius Pilate was at the time of the supposed execution. Also, there's the problem that nothing under Roman law would allow them to try Jesus in the way that's suggested in the Gospels. You could have had him killed by the Jews by stoning him to death, perhaps, for blasphemy. There's a supposed thing that he's said to be the king of the Jews, and that's enough to get him executed. But it's really not. The law was strictly enforced, and none of the things that are claimed about Jesus' death would really qualify to get him executed. So that story, it might be true that Jesus was executed, but it's been so much fabricated around it and so much hyperbolic ideas thrown onto it that you can no longer recognize the actual history, whatever that might be. It's written in a way to enhance the story and the narrative. Number 2, he suffered, died, and was buried an innocent man. Well, if he was executed on any sort of crucifix, he would have suffered and he would have died. But no, he wouldn't have been an innocent man. I mean, you're charged as guilty before they, kill you. So by Roman standards, he was not guilty. You might say, well, but he was innocent, but they declared him guilty, and you're supposed to live under the law of the land according to Christianity. So give unto Caesar's what Caesar's. Caesar says you are a criminal, then you are. So he's not innocent, even if he was, because the government ruled supreme. So, I mean, it's a technicality, but we don't know if he suffered or died. We know that that's what the book says. The stories say. We don't know that for a fact. His apostles said they saw the risen Christ. Well, we don't know that either. We know that somebody said that the apostles said that they saw the risen Christ. We don't know if the apostles actually said that or anything for that matter. So that's kind of a problem. We know maybe 1, perhaps 2 apostles that can be established historically speaking without just relying on the Bible. Not very much. It's not really impressive, but we don't have anything that they wrote, and in fact, you'd be hard pressed to show that any of them knew how to write. except for maybe one or two. And who are they dictating to? You know, it's like, well, who's in there with them as they're getting persecuted constantly to write this down? You know, at best you have some sort of messenger system where, somebody has heard that, this is their story or whatever, and they're telling it now. Who knows how many in-betweens we have between the person telling the original story and somebody finally writing it down. We don't know who wrote the Gospels at all. Like, that's up for debate. And they preached for decades for him, despite persecution and threats of death. Well, the threats for death weren't always related to Jesus exactly. That again, the ones that we can actually confirm did anything at all. And yeah, sure, they preached for decades. So what? What I want to go ahead and do is play through SJ's clip here. And again, let's see if this works. Who knows if it will. Let's see. Oh my, no. Oh dear, that's gonna be. I don't think that's gonna work. Well, we'll see. There we go. Okay, let's see.
You've reached SJ Thomason with Christian-apologist.com. So glad you've stopped by.
Yep.
Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the evidence we have in support of Jesus' resurrection.
You don't have any.
A few years ago, I called into the atheist experience.
And got pwned.
Because I had somewhat recently discovered some of the evidence in support of Jesus' resurrection.
There isn't any.
For example, I had been led to read Isaiah 53, which
you'd been told to read that by somebody that happened to be a Christian. Wow.
Prophesied Jesus' resurrection.
No, it doesn't.
I had looked at Psalm 22, which was very similar. I also had looked at a number of other passages, and I had read the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis.
Well, whoopee freaking do.
I felt they were all compelling. But one thing that really convinced me was I looked at the story of the early apostles, and I looked at the way that they preached for Jesus for decades, despite having no legal protections and despite massive persecution. Many of them were jailed, stoned, crucified, and beheaded. Their outcomes and their fates
were they, though?
Were pretty horrific when you think about it. So why did they do that? Well,
who knows? Money, powers, women, brief fame. They were bored. They actually believed in it.
I asked Matt Dillahunty why he thought the apostles were so brave.
I don't know if they were brave. I don't even know how many of them actually existed.
And why they worshiped Jesus for decades, despite.
Because, I mean, if they did worship him, that's a question too, because that's written later into the story for all we know. Maybe they just followed him. There was plenty of people going around being cult-like leaders at that time, so,
having any of these protections, Matt responded that their willingness to believe does not validate their belief. Well,
exactly.
Of course, that's true. He pointed to the examples of Muslims and Hindus, and some of them might be martyrs, and they're martyrs for their beliefs. I asked Matt, I said, do you believe that the apostles saw the risen Jesus? He said, I believe.
No. Not only did they not see that, because it's impossible, but even if they thought that they saw it, whatever happened or didn't happen is lost to history. The writings of the writings of the writings of the writings of the communication game, the phone game, whatever you want to call it, it's too far abstract from the actual event, whatever that is. But yeah, sure, whatever.
I believe they believed in Jesus. So he believed they believed in Jesus, but of course he doesn't recognize the fact that they were in the unique position, unlike the current martyrs that we have, they were in the unique position to know whether their beliefs were true.
Okay, so I just want to repeat that. That's the main point I'm going to really be talking about in my live stream here.
Like the current martyrs that we have, they were in the unique position to know whether their beliefs were true.
Okay, so supposedly the apostles were in the unique unique position to know whether their beliefs are true. Even if that's true, so what? So I'm going to use that same not enough quotes in the universe methodology on Mormonism. Joseph Smith, who was told by an angel, Gabriel, I think, Archangel, I believe, to go check out these golden tablets in a cave that he did, and they were there, and only he could decipher them, and no one else got to see them except maybe somebody did, and then, then they vanished mysteriously, and, you got some other people to go along with him and agree with him, and they preached for a long time without much, if any, legal protection. In fact, they were persecuted rather roughly. Joseph Smith wound up in jail where he tried to escape, falling from a two-story window. On his way down, he was shot. So it's like, look, if the fall doesn't kill you, my bullet's going to kill you. They really didn't like him. So why would he do that if he knew what he was saying was false? He was in the unique position to know whether or not his statements were true or not. Why wouldn't he just say it was all a sham and give it up long before getting killed? Why not just come clean? I mean, yeah, if you're in jail, I mean, you're for whatever it was, I don't even know offhand, but just come clean. Okay, fine. People will call you a charlatan. He's already being called a charlatan. People, already, he had a history of scamming people. So it wouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody. And he himself is in the unique position to know better. What's more, the two closest followers, the original followers, Oliver Cowdery, which is one of them, would have known at least to some extent that this was real or not, or that this was bunk. Certainly some of the earlier translators and that had to work on the Book of Mormon as it became, had to have known that something was not right, but yet they persisted anyways, despite probably heavy doubts or plain out skepticism, or not even really being sure that any of it was true. And these people that said, oh no, I saw it, they were in the unique position to know that it was true or not. If you ever see a psychic be debunked live, James Randi, of course, infamous for debunking a ton of different psychic sort of claims, and you'll notice a pattern. And other programs have done this as well, but they'll get the so-called psychic on, which there isn't any such thing as a psychic. It's all scams. It's all, just cold reading or warm reading or hot reading. It's all stuff that you can do naturally. It's nothing supernatural at all. And they'll bring them on and they'll have them read the thing or, whatever it is. The one that they tested, that she said she could hold the photograph of somebody that was dead and tell you everything about them. And so they gave her a photograph, and she's like, oh yeah, this person died whenever blah 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 and all this stuff, and the gal that's interviewing her is like, well, that's me when I was a kid, so I'm clearly not dead. And what you'll see is cognitive dissonance in action. You will see it in their eyes, you'll see it in their facial expressions, you'll see them going like this moment of just bewilderment. And they'll often say, well, that, you tricked me. And it's like, oh, but see, I was reading you, or I was reading the other spirits in the room. And there's never a moment where they come clean and, oh, well, obviously I was wrong. It was all fake. They don't do that. And they are in the unique position to know that their powers are diddly squat bunk. But they don't do that. You can watch, there's several different road trips this comedian did. Creationist road trip. There's a Area 51 alien road trip, and other things like that, where he takes people that have conspiracy weird beliefs on a road trip to explore the actual facts and to explore their ideas as well, and who might be on their side. He even did it with, I think, flat earthers. And in every case, when confronted with reality, the believer will not relent, except, well, there's a couple exceptions in the show, which is, as you would expect, statistically. At least you're gonna, if you get usually a group of 5, there's going to be at least one that is kind of on the fence, or says, okay, well, maybe I'll leave this belief behind, or be skeptical of this belief that I had, because it doesn't really add up in the end. But it's rare. Usually you'll see cognitive dissonance in action, where the person doubles down on what they believe. They think that they've been set up. They'll accuse the tester of cheating. They'll accuse the test of failing. They'll do anything and everything. The creationist road trip, I think, is the best example of this that I've seen. And in one of the things he pours water on the ground to show them, like, this is how water flows down hills. I forget what it's connected to in the show, but at any rate, in that moment, one of the people says, "But that's your water." Because it's like, well, it's your water. See, that's why it flowed down in the way that you wanted, because it's your water. Like, so the idea that he would, be able to control, manipulate, it's his water. I mean, just, whatever it is, that this is nothing more than something that your brain does when you have a belief. It's really hard to let it go. Archangel Morari. That's right. Yeah, that's right. I don't know why I said Gabriel. I'm sorry. But anyway, yeah. So whether or not the person or the group is in a unique position to know the truth is completely and utterly irrelevant. Because whatever the truth might be, their own brain might work against them. In fact, we see that happen all the time with believers of all sorts of weird woo that's out there. Another example is snake handlers. If you're not familiar with these folk, they're really fun to watch. They'll dance around with snakes, poisonous snakes. And they do this because there's a verse in the Bible that says you'll be able to handle snakes and not get bitten. Well, of course they get bitten, because you're handling snakes and you're waving them around as you dance. I'm pretty sure the snakes aren't really happy about that. And so, yeah, they get poisoned and sick and sometimes die. So how do they rationalize that? Well, if they get bit, it was because they didn't have strong enough faith. If they get sick, it's because their faith wasn't strong enough. And if they die, well, clearly their faith wasn't strong enough. It's not that snakes actually bit them, although they did. It's just that, well, it doesn't really count, even though the Bible says you won't get bitten. No, what it really says is you won't get bitten if you have enough faith, even though that's not what it says. But we'll make it say that, because it can kind of say that. Now, over time, they develop an immunity to the venom, and so even when they get bite, it doesn't affect them anymore. And maybe the snakes just give up biting over time because they know that they're not accomplishing anything. Of course, if you're domesticating the snakes at all, even if they're venomous, they're less likely to bite you. And I think that they might be well advised to get some snake venom antidote before going to dance with the snakes, so that, just in case they don't have enough faith, that they'll have a backup plan. So the so-called fact that the apostles would have known the truth doesn't matter. Because let's say that they knew that Jesus just is dead. And that's it. That's the end of the story. In fact, that's how one of the Gospels ends, is Jesus is just dead. And that's it. And then the other Gospels, all of a sudden he's alive. Ooh, Well, why? All it takes is one person, and it doesn't have to be the apostles or the disciples, or it can just be some random follower, or it could be one of them. I don't know. All it takes is one of them to say, I saw Jesus, he's alive. And then that idea circulates around, and bam, you've got to believe. Apologia covered that already. It's an extraordinarily plausible scenario. It is psychologically sound. It's much better as an explanation than somebody came back from the dead. But you already believe that this story is true anyways. You already have bought into the other miracles anyways. You already bought into water to wine. You already bought into walking on water and healing people that are blind and lame and mute and what have you. And depending on which gospel you decided to read, you even believe in other people coming back from the dead. So a whole bunch of people came out of their graves and walked around for a while in one of the gospels. So, why not? You want to talk about exaggeration? I'm pretty sure that's an exaggeration because somebody would have written that down, I think. Not that wasn't, a follower of this cult, because really, when you have a leader that's alive and leading people, it's a cult. It's only when the leader dies does it actually become a religion, and that's really the distinction between cults and religion. If the leader's alive in the cult and the religion, there's more distinction than that, but that's the jaded one. Yeah, and then of course, the snake. That's a good point. Lord Sheep Mayhem, that the snakes probably are dehydrated and malnutrition, so they probably don't have any venom left or will to bite in the first place. But yeah, so there's plenty of alternate reasons why the snakes might not bite you in the first place. But when they do, and when you get sick, it's not God's fault. It's your fault. It's always your fault. It can't ever be God's fault. All right. So what else? That was 142, by the way, of this.
They had seen the risen Jesus.
No, they didn't.
So today I completed a blog article, so you can reference that.
Good. Yeah, whatever. I'm not going to read your blog again.
If you'd like to follow along here, but it's called...
Why didn't you link it in your description? I mean, I'm not going to read it, but I'm just saying, why didn't you link your blog in the description of the video? Boggles the mind. By the way, I have a blog if you want, but I don't really write, I write weird stuff. I don't know. I write stuff. I don't know. You make of it whatever you will. Some of it's good. Some of it, I don't know. People have read it, so, if you want to read it, you can. I don't know. Whatever.
Called Evidence for Jesus' Divinity from Peter, James, and Paul.
Okay, so circular reasoning. That's all you've got to offer us. These people that I guess you could say we know they existed, although I'm pretty darn skeptical that they did, but whatever. And you could say, well, you're too skeptical or what. Regardless, okay, so these people that did not actually write down the events, because, well, except for, I think Paul might have been literate and able to write, and one of them was supposedly a doctor. I want to say Simon, but I don't know. It's been too long. I don't remember anymore. I don't care enough to remember. But at any rate, so you would have had two maybe that could have written, but nowhere does it say I am it's whatever the date is or something, and I'm writing this down. And in between, I just saw him turn water to wine. Wow, amazing! It's not written in that way. The Bible is written as a narrative structure that's more reminiscent of an author writing a book than history. And you can see many examples of it if you read the Gospels. And the biggest example that I usually bring up is that Jesus went out to the desert alone. That's where the story should end if it's being told by a witness to these events. Because he just went out on his own, and Jesus didn't write down anything, apparently. Leaves that to his followers, because, why would God bother to write anything down at all? Leave it up to those fallible humans that are full of sin to record what you're doing, Anyway, so he goes out in the desert, and then he gets tempted by well, of course, later it becomes Satan, but it's originally just the tempters, the angels kind of responsible for testing resolve or something. But at any rate, and he survives that, and he gets back, and then the story goes on. And the explanation of how anybody knew to write that down was that Jesus told his followers later. I'm like, yeah, because Jesus really seems like the kind of person that would brag about something like that. I mean, it just doesn't fit with Jesus's character, and it doesn't say. And then Jesus came back to see us after going out in the desert. We were really worried about him, but he told us that he met the devil. He was tempted, but he was like, yeah, whatever. He pwned him, whatever. It's just not written that way. It's written as an all-seeing observer to the narration, and almost all the Gospels are written in that way. They're not written from a first-person point of view, and they're written not in any way that would suggest that they're anything more than a story that's been majorly changed and edited over time.
An interesting and rather embarrassing aspect of the Bible is that its 40 or more authors never attempt to shield us from the sometimes ugly truth. In fact, the ugly truth is what differentiates the Gospels from the Gnostic texts.
Kind of. But if the Gnostic texts happen to be canon, you would just have a different excuse for them being canon. You say, well, yeah, sure, but, Jesus, sure, he was a prodigy when he was a child, but he also, threw stones at that one kid or whatever.
Which were written much later. In the Gnostic infancy Gospel of Thomas, which was written sometime between 140 and 170 AD, the author sprinkles numerous examples of Jesus as a child prodigy who astounds his teachers and playmates with his knowledge and miracles. Reactions to Jesus are painted differently than we see in the Gospels.
But so what? Wouldn't it be more plausible if this is the Son of God and or God incarnate that he would know everything? Like, he wouldn't need to go to school at all. He would just know all the stuff. So actually they wouldn't. I'm not sure who he would be impressing, but and that people were impressed by it or scared by him. Why wouldn't that fit?
It appears that people didn't doubt him. Here's an example of something that was said.
Yeah,
don't think of him as a small
blah,
speech.
blah, 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 blah.
Being a teacher comes naturally to a lawyer. Don't so that as
Skip.
a father you may be taught the name of self.
Yeah, I don't need to hear the Gnostic thing. I mean, at least even Christians don't believe that, but I don't believe the rest of the Bible. So just get to the point already.
Or Pharisee has spoken Gnostic Gospels. By the time the Gnostic accounts of Jesus' life and ministry were written, people had time to develop legends and to.
Okay, this is another common point, that the time to develop a legend is actually like that. It's immediate. It doesn't take that long. It doesn't take a year or 10 years, which we have plenty of time since Jesus' death to the earliest known copy of writings that we have about any of this stuff. It is plenty of time to become legendary. Years go by, but we don't need that. It really only takes a moment to get a legend started. And again, it's, people can believe things that they're told are true. It's part of our makeup as people is groupthink and hive mind. And experiments have been done over and over again that shows that most people will follow the crowd. So, they have people facing the wrong way in the elevator, and the person gets in and they inevitably turn around, with a few exceptions not doing so. But usually people do it. They've done experiments where the actors are there taking this test, and the mark is, unaware, and the actors start saying the wrong answer, so the mark starts saying the wrong answer, because, well, yeah, it must be the right. They're saying it, so I should go along. And then you can slowly fill the room with nothing but non-actors all giving the wrong answers to the test. They know that they're the wrong answers, but they figure that's what they should do. There's been other things where people start doing something because they think that it's what you're supposed to do. They're waiting for whatever to happen, and when this bell goes off, the person would raise their hand, and it had nothing. There's no sign. There's nothing to indicate. Nobody told anybody to do this. It's just, of course, this is the actor, and now the real person who sees this, and now they leave, and they hear the bell. They go, and then it goes on because that's what they thought they were supposed to do. So there's plenty of examples of groupthink like that, and that cult leaders and cults take advantage of our psychology, our need to be group linked and together and be in agreement and in harmony. What do if you've ever gone to any church service, you stand up and then you sit down, and you stand up and you sing a song, you pray standing up, you sit and pray, you kneel and pray. Everybody's doing everything in unison. Why? Well, there's an order to it. It's a production. In fact, there's the main pulpit that's elevated. It's a stage. It's a production. That's what makes it religion. Is there certain things that you do when you get there? There are certain things that you expect to happen. Oh, SJ is here. What did you miss? Logic, I guess, is what you missed. I wish I could have you in here. That's not how this works, though, unfortunately. The only way I know of that I can do conversations with people anymore will be through Discord, recording them on that, and then uploading the audio to YouTube with something as background noise for images. Thanks, YouTube, for taking away that feature. But anyways, so I was saying that you missed your XSplit in Skype. Okay. Well, I know Skype, but I don't know XSplit. But yeah, there might be a way to do that. I don't know. But at any rate, so the methodology in this video that I covered that you missed, SJ, was you said that the disciples, yes, it's true that them being martyred for their beliefs doesn't make their beliefs true, but they're in the unique position of knowing whether it's true or not. And my objection to that is that doesn't matter, because plenty of people who believe in woo are in the unique position to know that it's not true. And I referenced, the Mormons. Here you have Joseph Smith, who supposedly is told to go in a cave and look at some golden tablets. He's in a position to absolutely know if that's a true story or not. And they're persecuted a lot. He winds up dying, trying to escape a jail. So he's fallen down from 2 stories, gets shot on the way down. They really didn't like the guy. So he knew that it was all made up, that he made it up, but he didn't ever relent. He never said, yeah, I'm a scam artist, it's all a scam. He never gave up on that, nor did any of his followers who believed him. So it doesn't really, No, some did, but some didn't recant. But Joseph didn't. So, and by the way, the church changes the history anyways. In the current Book of Mormon, you won't find a single person that actually recanted because they changed their book, just like the Bible's been changed over time. So, and you've got plenty of people that say, well, I have psychic powers, and they've been debunked and will not admit that it's all fake. They just won't, no matter what. You got, what's his name, Uri Geller, still to this day won't admit that he's a fraudster, even though he's been exposed multiple times. Oh, well, yeah, sure. I mean, there were some questions there, but what I can do now is really true. Like, yeah, the Psalms are not prophecy, neither is Isaiah, and so yeah. Real life has shown its ugly head, so I have to end this stream. But I'll be back maybe later to deal with this nonsense in a full and edited video. But yeah, the same sort of methodology could be applied to any other woo belief, and it would then hold. So no.